Welcome to a Champion's Journey podcast. I'm Matt Davidson. From an early age, I've had the privilege of learning from world champions and world-class performers, and I've always been fascinated by what drives them to the pinnacle of achievement. In this podcast, I'll interview high performers to learn more about the habits and rituals which have helped them on the road to championship victory. This past December marked the 60th anniversary of the U.S. Army parachute team, the Golden Knights. During the team's biennial reunion celebration, I had the great honor of spending a day and having a conversation with one of the original members of the Golden Knights, the legendary Gerald Bourquin. Jerry's incredible military career includes service in the Korean War as an engineer and in Vietnam as a Huey and Cobra helicopter pilot. Jerry is an iconic pioneer of our sport, a champion parachutist, and an International Skydiving Museum Hall of Fame inductee. Even more impressive than his incredible list of achievements, Jerry is a true gentleman, genuinely kind, sincere, and exceedingly humble. Jerry is the embodiment of an ideal soldier and teammate who, 60 years ago, set the standards of personal and professional excellence that, to this day, all members of the Golden Knights strive to achieve. Today I have the great pleasure of having a conversation with one of my heroes, one of the original members of the U.S. Army Parachute Team's Golden Knights, Gerry Bourquin. Jerry is here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, to help celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Golden Knights. Jerry, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you, Matt.
I really appreciate you being here. It's a great honor for me to be able to interview you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and have this conversation.
Well, thank you. It's my honor.
In 1951, you joined the Army, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us, well, I'm sure the Army's changed a lot since I came in, and if you could just tell us, how was the Army back then?
Well, it left some to be desired. At one time, I didn't know if I'd make it to retirement age, but it was demanding. Our problem then was the equipment that we had was all Second World War stuff. We didn't have any new equipment back then. So basic training was rough. It was winter time, and it was very demanding.
Where did you go to basic training?
Fort Riley, Kansas.
Fort Riley, Kansas,
yeah.
Wintertime. Oh, that was chilly. Were you in the old World War II barracks?
Yes. Yeah, the old coal furnaces.
Yep, so open bays, open showers, all that fun stuff.
Clothes hung on the wall, no lockers or anything.
Do you have any memories of your first drill sergeant?
Well, our drill sergeants were pretty good. Their vocabularies were pretty limited, and you got the point, what they wanted.
I think back then, I imagine they could use a few colorful
profanity,
words. So after you went to basic training, I was just I'll refer to my notes here. You served in the Korean War.
Yes.
And how many years?
Were you
there?
The tour was a year then. I went out in 52 and got back in 53.
Okay. Did you do the one tour or?
Just in Korea, one tour.
Oh, well, I'd like to say I really appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any memories, any lessons learned from your time there?
Oh, wow. I think the biggest thing I learned was I'd never been any place that was colder in the winter and hotter in the summer. It was pretty miserable.
I can't imagine. I have a great deal of respect for you. Thank you very much for your service there. Is there anything in particular that you can remember, any highlights or lesson learned other than, it being miserable there? Did you learn anything from the experience that changed your life for the better?
Well, working with people, I think one of the biggest things is we were so close to the MLR that when the aircraft would come back from their missions, if they would land on the PSP too hard, their guns were so hot they would fire, so you learn to keep your head down when you heard them coming in. Wow. But other than that, it was just a miserable miserable tour.
So when you came back from the Korean War, had you already been a parachutist at that point?
No, I was a leg.
What was your military occupational specialty?
Infantry at the time, but then I went to the engineers at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. I re-enlisted, and they said, well, there's 3 ways you can get out of here: die, get discharged, or go airborne. So I just re-enlisted, so that was out. I didn't want to die, so I went airborne.
Wow.
Went to Fort Bragg and went through jump school there.
How was jump school then?
I thought it was pretty good. It was very demanding for me because I hadn't been in the training that I should have been, having just got back from Korea. But it was good training. The instructors were very good, and again, it was wintertime, so you kept moving to keep warm.
Wintertime in Fort Benning, Georgia, can still be a bit brutal.
Well, this is at Bragg.
Oh, it was at Bragg at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you can, just tell us what it was like, because when I went through, it was at Fort Benning. I got to jump out of the 250-foot towers there, and so I take it those towers, they didn't have those.
No, we didn't
Bragg.
have the towers. You were a trolley trooper going down your cables, and the PT was very strenuous at the time. Of course, the runs every morning down Long Street in the cold. And you couldn't wear a T-shirt, so you'd be taking your T-shirt off, putting your starched jacket back on, and running, and it caused some problems with chafing.
I bet I was about to ask. I'll bet you had to wear jump boots then when you were running too, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That. When we were doing it, it was just the airborne shuffle. We didn't have to run,
is that right?
too far for too long.
Oh,
so it was, and at the time I was 19 years old, I think. So I was kind of disappointed, as to how slow it was. But they like to. I think over the years they changed it a bit to where they wanted to make sure that they didn't hurt you doing the physical training part of it, so that they get a higher success rate. Getting you to go through the school.
Well, they didn't think much that way when I went through jump school.
But it shows that the training back then, it definitely made seem to toughen you guys up from that generation, and you guys are definitely a different breed from what we've got going on now. So yeah, much respect for you once again for having the strength and the fortitude to be able to get through that training when it was really tough. What kind of aircraft were you jumping then for jump school?
119s.
Okay.
Was our main. And then toward the end, then we finally got the 130s and 123s.
Okay. Were the C-130s relatively new to the inventory at that time?
For us they were, yeah. They had been in the system a while, but not for our use.
Okay. And how many jumps did you make when you were in jump school?
Oh, we made 5.
Okay.
And then the cherry jump in the company.
Nice. What was the equipment then?
Well, we were jumping T-10s.
Okay.
So we had the T-7A reserves and the T-10s.
So you went from, you graduated jump school, and where did you go from there?
Well, from there I went to air transportability, aerial delivery, and jump master light aircraft. And from there, went to the 618th Light Equipment Company, airborne. We were under CONARC, and it was to evaluate equipment that the unit could be put into the 82nd and the 101st, so it was a test for that.
Okay, and you were still an engineer at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. But they put you through some of the heavy drop, and those are usually courses that the riggers go through. I was a rigger by MOS.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Everything we had it had to be transportable and aerial deliverable. So we had to go out and test it. And I was in ops then, and we would do all of the weight and balances and stuff and work with the Air Force on that and the reserves.
So if there's any points in the story where you want to stop me to make sure that I'm not missing anything, or I want to make sure we cover all aspects of your incredible journey. So once you went from there, you were an engineer. when did you start skydiving?
Well, while I was an engineer, this fellow that was in the unit, Harry Arter, D-20, was in my unit with me, and we were good friends. And one night he came back. They had just started. Jacques Estelle and Lou Sanborn had come down to train the first group. And he would come back and he'd say, "Jerry, you have to come see what we're doing." And I said, "Harry, leave me alone. I'm airborne. I'm satisfied with that." So after about 8 or 10 times of this, I finally said, "Harry, leave me alone. I will come up and sit through a class with you and just see what you're doing." I went up that night, which was a Wednesday night, and their meeting was the next night, and I sat through a packing class, emergency procedures. I joined the club. I bought a parachute that night, and Saturday I was jumping. I started, and I never looked back.
Wow.
My D is 22, and his was 20, so you can see how involved I got and how rapidly I loved it.
Right, yeah, that was quick. Just, to two numbers up there. What kind of equipment did you first start jumping on, and how much did you pay for that parachute system?
I think we paid $35 for main and reserve, and we were jumping the C9 and C8 canopies. The C8s were the white ones, and the multicolor was the emergency backpacks, and it was all salvage equipment. We'd get it through salvage. We'd get a canopy and cut it in 4 pieces because they'd cut the suspension lines off. Cut it in 4 pieces, turn them back in for 4 parachutes, and then try to redraw them. And finally, we were getting them with the suspension line still on them, so we could take them and modify them. And the shelf life on a parachute back then was 7 years. So at 7 years, whether they had been used or whether they were still in the hermetically concealed containers, they were gone. So we would get them, and we were getting brand new ones that were 7 years old. And so we were living high on the hog then. And then we would go out and we'd scrounge equipment. We built our own rigger loft. We scrounged 9710s and the sewing machines and all of the packing tables, and we'd get scrounge cotton duck. That's what we were making our packing mats out. We built our own tension devices and all of that, line separators and everything. So we did everything together as a team, and we became a family in itself.
That's incredible. Did you have to be a certified parachute rigger
at
at
that
the time?
You had to be a rigger. It could be FAA or military, but you had to be a rigger to be on the team.
Okay, so it was just one or the other. It didn't have to be both.
All right.
Okay, so it was. Wow, yeah, I can only imagine. Getting those canopies and making all of the modifications yourself.
And we were experimenting with the modifications too. We didn't know what we were doing.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah. You guys are you're pioneers, and taking a lot of trial and error and self-imposed R&D.
Yeah, we got to go out and jump them too.
Did you have what were some of the more exciting stories? Did you have anything that ever went wrong?
Oh gosh.
With any of those?
Well, nothing went wrong, but it got exciting because in your experimentation, you didn't know what your rate of descent was going to be because the 1-1s came down pretty fast anyway. But we extended the lower lateral bands and opened up the gores so that they'd be pretty wide. And it didn't give us as much forward speed as we wanted, but it did give us an increased rate of descent, which was not good. But, we went from T's to double L's and into the TU. And, of course, Lloyd Brodden came in with the Conquistador, which was a rounded open window in the back moved the lower lateral band up, so you didn't have one all the way around. It went up through the modification. So, but the double T's or the TUs were the favorites at the time. They lasted a long time till the Paracommanders came out.
Okay, what year did the Paracommanders come out?
That would have been about 64.
Okay.
We went to France. I was on the 61 U.S. team. And we went to France, and after the meet, which the U.S. won significantly, this gentleman came up to the group and said, "I'd like to show you boys something." And, of course, our ears perked up right away, and we said, "What is it? And who are you?" He said, well, my name is Lemoyne, and this is what I have. Let me show you. And so he opened the trunk of his car, which was a 49 Chevy convertible. And we looked in the trunk, and it looked like a box of rags. And I looked at him, and Danny Byard was standing on the other side, and I said, what is it? He said, it's an ascension chute. And I said, I beg your pardon? He said, it's an ascension chute. And I said, what's it for? He said, it's to train French paratroopers how to do PLFs without the use of an airplane. So, of course, that really intrigued us. So he took this out, and he spread it out, and then he took a rope out of the back of his trunk, tied it on his bumper, tied it onto this QAC harness that this little French guy had, and he took the slack out of the rope, drove his car out on the drop zone, and he handed me one side, and he gave Danny Byard the other side, and he said, you guys hold this up. And he got in the car, and he said, you ready? I said, ready. So he took off, and we took a few steps, and this device inflated, took him up as high as he could for that rope, and he released it and came in and did a PLF.
Wow.
That was the reason for this ascension chute. Well, we were really intrigued then. So Captain Perry was our team leader at the time for the team. And he got with Mr. Lemoyne and worked out a letter of agreement that he would send 2 parachutes back to the States for us. So we got him back, and Herm Weber was our contact with Pioneer Parachutes at the time. And we gave them to Herm, and he took them up to Pioneer in Manchester, Connecticut, to check the engineering part of it and make sure everything was structurally sound and it was a good deal. And we said, well, we need turn windows in it, and this is where we want them. So they put the turn windows in, sent the first rig back down to us, and we jumped it on Blue Drop Zone, Yuma, Arizona, Army test facility, because we were doing world records at the time there. And the Para Commander was born. That was the first one. They were the long line. We shortened them up to make them more serviceable for accuracy, for competition jumping. But that's when the Para Commander came to be.
Wow, that's an incredible story. I didn't know that. What were the differences with the long lines and the short lines? Why did you find it more beneficial to?
The long lines seemed to oscillate more.
Okay.
The short lines gave it more stability and for the turns and the runs into the target. Of course, back in those days, you were all downwind landings for your accuracy.
Wow.
So you worked the cone down to the target itself.
Some of those landings look pretty rough. I remember watching
we
some
call
videos.
them crash and burns. In fact, I brought a book that's got a picture of me doing a crash and burn. And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. You guys didn't get to see before, but when I got here, Jerry had all of these incredible photos laid out and some great information. I can't wait to look at those later. You said you were out in Yuma doing the world records. What did that consist of?
Well, it was accuracy group and individual, and a group of 9 down to 3, and then your individual accuracy. And it was exciting because we did day and night. And if you've ever been to Yuma, you'll know that there's a lot of cactus out there.
Oh, yeah.
And your drop zone is surrounded with it. And at night, we jumped with lanterns on our helmets, and of course, and you would track it, and you drop your wind indicator first, which was a lantern on a canopy. And it changed 7 times in direction during its descent from 2,000 feet.
That's more than your average dog
That
leg.
really makes you concerned when it changes like that. But we never put anybody off the drop zone.
Wow.
We always got everybody on the drop zone.
And this is before sophisticated GPS or anything like
There
that.
wasn't
So you're
any-
all
no,
spotting just
no
yourself
GPS.
from the
Yeah.
aircraft.
Yes, sir. That was all spotting.
And it was it all based on just the wind streamer data, or did you have any other data to go
No,
off of?
that was it.
Wow. Going back a little bit to where you were talking about the ascension, do you remember about how long that line was, about how high the jumper got up before they released him?
Oh, the rope was probably 150, 200 feet long.
Okay.
So he got up as far as he could get with the speed that he was driving his car. He was probably up at least 100, 150 feet.
Wow. And it sounds basically like, obviously, that was the predecessor to all of the touristy things that you see, the boats out in the ocean with pretty much the same kind of device there.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And it was a 24-foot canopy, and it came down slower than the 28.
Oh, wow.
Even slower than the 28 1.6. So, yeah, it was a good canopy. It had 36 slots in it. But they were created so the upper layer would, when the wind blew through it, it would give lift off the next layer down. So it was an airfoil.
Wow.
But it was a round one.
Yeah, that's the predecessor to the Ram Air canopy, the way we know it today, right? With the top and bottom skin.
Yeah.
Nice. I've heard, I haven't jumped a PC myself, but I've heard that the opening shocks are pretty substantial on those.
Actually, they were more weird than they were hard. If you looked at them during their deployment, they would look like they would try to fold up and then reinflate, which wasn't a bad thing. It had a center line in it that would come down. You had two that would come down to each riser.
Okay.
On each side. The thing you had to watch on a PC was don't do a hook turn, because it would drive you in the ground.
Oh, just a big oscillation.
No, just spin you right in. It'd screw you into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, today we have the same thing. That's one of the most dangerous aspects of the sport, are people doing low turns under high performance canopies. So.
Well, with a square though, when you do a low turn, fast turn, it'll oscillate you and then drive you in. It give you forward speed when you impact the ground. A PC would just screw you into the ground, straight down.
All right, is that what the term auger in came from?
No. That was without a parachute.
Oh, all right. Oh. So, you need to take that?
No.
Okay. So we'll backtrack a little bit too. I would like to talk about the tryout process a bit. I was talking to Lee R.K. Smith, one of your teammates from that time, and he was telling me that the tryouts they lasted from 1959 to June of 1961. Is that correct?
No, the tryouts went into 63, 64.
Oh wow! So it was a couple years of
the difference. Tryouts. The difference was back then when you did the style event, we had panels, and you didn't know what panel you were going to get till after you left the aircraft. When the judges, you'd have 5 judges spread out, and they had the panel on the ground and the arrow for your heading that you had to return to after each maneuver. And you had a panel on each side. You could get a left panel, a right panel, or a double panel. And you had to remember when you stepped out and you looked down, they would saw it and they'd roll a die. And it would have 1, 2, or 3 on it, and they would do the appropriate panel selection. Then you had to interpret that and then start your turns. And it was real critical because they were very, very concise on what they wanted you to do. And if you made your turn, you overshot, of course, you're adding time to your turns. If you undershot, then you got dock points. And each back loop that you did, you had to come out on heading or you'd get docked. We jumped 6,600 feet, and you had to open between your 25th and 30th second. If you went over, you got dock points. Of course, if you went under, then it means you just turn real fast. But we'd do that from 6,600 feet.
Wow, that's a lot of decisions to make in a very short amount of time.
And not knowing, I understand later when they were filming them, they would tell them what they were going to do the night before.
Right.
So they would be prepared, psychologically prepared, which I think took away from what the style event was intended to be. So I'd like to see the guys that turn so fast do them with a panel where they didn't know what they were going to have to do till after they left the aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on the style and accuracy team for my first 2 years on the Golden Knights, and we knew which set we were doing at the time. So I can only imagine, having to make those kind of decisions in a short amount of time. Now, the Golden Knight assessment and selection process now, or tryouts, is mostly based on peer evaluations, and it's based on your your potential as a parachutist. It's not it doesn't go off of your skill already. If you have the potential to learn, and if you play well with others, if you can get along well with your team, then you usually end up doing all right. Was your tryouts then, was it more based on performance at the time, or was it based on the other things we talked about as well?
I think everything was involved. Oh, by the way, I won the 1964 National Style Championship. That's
awesome.
why I really like style. It was, could you get along with your fellow soldiers, and could you work good together with them, and your appearance, your mental hygiene, your physical hygiene, and your performance.
So not a whole lot's changed.
No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty close to the same.
Then when the original team was forming, did you already know most of the guys that were going through, or did you have anyone that was relatively unknown that you had to learn about them and their personality?
No, I don't think so. I when I started, I was with the 18th Airborne Corps Club, and the guys that were starting with the strike team were out on the drop zone, so I was jumping with them before I even got on the team. And one day, John Hollis was our first shirt, and he was on the target, and I had just got out. I did my first 10-second delay, and I was falling, and I thought, back then you said, when in doubt, whip it out. Get that reserve out. Right. And, of course, I went out, being a novice. I went into a flat spin, and I could see trees going by, and everything was a blur and everything, and I thought, get it out. So I dumped the reserve, and I got on the ground, and John Hollis looked at me, and he said, "What did you do?" I said, "I was in a flat spin." He said, "You turned 180 degrees." So mentally, I was in a flat spin. And then when he told me that, I was embarrassed because I'd only turned halfway around. But that was a reaction at the time, and it was drilled into us. When in doubt, whip it out.
Oh, that's good. That's we still have that saying now, and it's not a bad thing to live by.
I think it's very good.
Always better to be safe than sorry, for sure.
Yeah, but I sure learned. But he sure got a kick out of that.
Oh, yeah.
He thought that was funny.
How many jumps did you have then when you went through tryout? When you first started going through tryout?
Oh, goodness. I went to the Nationals while they were tryout. They were U.S. team tryouts. They weren't called Nationals then. In 1960. And I think I placed 26th or something, which wasn't too bad for not knowing anything. But then I started improving, so in 61, I think I placed 8th. I was selected as the alternate for the team in 61. 62, I was on it. 63, I was on it. 64, I was on it. So I improved a little bit.
And maybe I missed it. How many jumps did you say you had when you first started going through the selection process?
I think I had 75 jumps.
75 jumps, wow. And if you can tell me and tell us a bit about General Stilwell and your relationship with him, and how you met him, and then later on how he started the Golden Knights out of the Strack parachute team in 1959.
Yeah. Well, he and I started jumping at the same time, actually. And one day we were on the packing mats, and there was people that would run up and try to do stuff for him, and he didn't like that at all. And one day we were packing, and we were in adjacent packing mats, and I looked over and I saw him. He made an error on his stow tray on his sleeve. So instead of trying to fix it, I just said, "Excuse me, sir, I think if you go back and check your stow tray, you'll find that you made an error." And I left it at that. I went back and I continued my packing, and he went ahead and corrected his. And about 15, 20 minutes later, he came over and he said, "Sergeant Bourquin," he said, "I sure appreciate your help and not getting involved in it other than that." So we became friends. And it wasn't long before he'd call me and he'd say, "Do you want to jump in?" And I'd have Bill Morrissey drive my car out to the drop zone, and we'd go over to the airfield and fly in, jump in. So It worked out pretty neat. And we became good friends, and then good personal friends. And his wife and my wife would send notes to each other. And he's just a spectacular individual. And you want to do anything you could for him. Everybody just loved him. But he was such a spectacular person, and he wanted that team to go. He and Colonel Bill Greaves were two of the major people that got the team going and kept it going. And he protected us. He looked out after us. When we first got a TD, they wanted to give it to us as non-jump slots. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. So he went around and found some people on post that were on jump status but weren't jumping. So he pulled their jump slots and assigned them to the team. So made us a little uncomfortable on the post for a while. But all in all, he really pushed for us, and through all of the acquisition of the gear and all of that. And of course, he had a streamer himself and broke his legs, but he'd drive the Citron out to the drop zone and crutch out there and had his canes and participate in everything we did. But he was just that kind of a person that was really a great asset to us.
This sport has a great way of drawing those kind of people too.
I think so. Yeah. I've met so many wonderful people in skydiving. It's really an honor to associate with them.
It sure is, and we still have the Stillwell Trophy and the Stillwell Award, and I think it's it's an affectionate way, but we kind of make fun of some of people that have won the award. Kind of have some kind of mishap that everybody likes to make fun of throughout these. So every year someone's elected for that. So it's they should announce that at the reunion this year, and it'll be interesting to see and to hear the latest story. Yeah. Do you have any other funny stories or anecdotes you can remember about General Stillwell and your time with him?
Oh, I had so much respect for him. The only thing that stands out that I remember is one day he came out to the drop zone to jump with us, and as he left the otter, he wasn't expecting anybody to be with him. And as he dropped away, I left the aircraft with him, unbeknownst to him. And as I pulled my feet up and started dropping straight down, and as I went by him, I saluted him. And he thought that was the greatest thing he'd seen. So I'll always remember the expression on his face when I went by him.
Nice. And now that's a usual move for a demonstrator to do as they're exiting the aircraft is saluting for the press that are on the airplane. So that was still during the Strack team period? And how long did that period last before?
From 59 to 61 is when we became an official organization. July of 61, I think.
And General Stillwell was the primary driver of that happening?
Yeah, he stayed with us. And he was Deputy Corps Commander, 18th Airborne Corps at the time. So he had some power there.
And how did he go about that, about making the team an official organization?
Oh, that's a good question. He did all of it from his office. He did all of the works on that. It would be very difficult to try to explain how he did it.
But you were there for for the whole thing.
That's when he asked me. He said, "You guys need a pocket patch or something," and we had a little competition of design of pocket patches, and mine was chosen, and that's the skydiver in the middle of the shield, and then. Later on, a short time later, we all got together and said, well, we need another patch, a shoulder patch. So Lieutenant William Goodrich and I sat down and we co-designed the owl's head.
Wow.
And the parachute that's on the owl's head is a black and gold diamond pattern. That's the first canopy that the Army ever bought us, was a black and gold diamond pattern. That's why that's on there.
That's incredible. We have to learn that history as we're going through tryouts. So I can remember learning about that and memorizing it and being in awe of it. And now I'm in awe sitting here talking with you about it. And since we're on the subject, I'm going to move off camera here for a second. I brought something, and if since we're talking about it, I can show the people here what your pocket patch looks like. And it's my original one. I brought a marker too. If you wouldn't mind signing it for me, that'd be great.
Sure.
Brought a Sharpie too. Or always have to have a Sharpie. So this was my original one, and these are the jump wings that my dad. These were my dad's jump wings.
Fantastic!
That he got in '74, and he pinned them on me when I graduated jump school. So I hold on to these, and this is Jerry's patch there that he designed, the pocket patch. And if you wouldn't mind signing that for me, I'd greatly appreciate it.
You want me to put my D on there?
Yes, please. Thanks so much, Jerry.
It's my honor.
Since we're talking about my dad with the jump wings, I asked him if there's any questions that he'd like to ask, and one of his questions was, did you envision the team turning into what it is today and the diversity with all the different disciplines?
Had no idea. Absolutely no idea. The thing that we were attempting to do, one, is to survive. But to design a parachute or a modification that would function well and safe. And then figure out the maneuvers in free fall. Because we were working with the French cross to start with, that Estelle had, which was arms straight out to the side and your legs straight and slightly parted. And then we were to do your turns, they were hand turns. We didn't know all this other stuff yet.
So this was four style and accuracy you're talking about, and this was before. I'm sorry, but four style, and it was before the tucked body position.
Oh,
came
absolutely,
into play.
Yeah. We called it the frog and the modified frog when we started pulling. We found out that your legs washed so bad in the turn that you could overshoot and everything. So we figured, well, if we shorten that body up, it would cut that down. So we ended up pulling our feet up and then pulling our arms in so we could use aerodynamics more than the hand turns. So it was just a slow development of learning what to do, and everybody helped each other. There wasn't anybody that was a holdout. If you did something wrong, you would tell them about it. So, try it, but expect this. And we found that this works really good, so if you try this, then it might work better.
So for folks out there that don't know, that haven't been skydiving before, it can be equated to like a figure skater, I guess. So if a figure skater, is trying to do a turn or a pivot and their arms are way out here, it's going to be a lot slower of a turn. But when you bring everything in, you see that figure skater speed up.
Exactly.
It's a similar thing there. So you were talking about how you all helped each other. And you're focused on style and accuracy. One of my questions was, do you have any memory or recollection, or were you involved in any way in the first RW jump or the first link up in the air between two jumpers?
No, because Jim Pearson and, I don't remember the other fellow's name, did the first baton pass. But back then, if you came close to somebody in the air, that was exciting. I mean, it was just one of those things you had to learn to do on closure rate, and you couldn't touch. You had to work all aerodynamics. If you reach for it, you blow it. So you had to do everything nice and smooth. I did have the good fortune of doing the first baton pass in England with one of the SAS, 22nd SAS fellows over there. So that was quite an honor to do that. It was in April of 1961 that we did that. Of course, I joined the British Parachute Association.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Pete Sherman was the fellow's name on the SAS. Okay. Yeah.
That's a relationship that we still carry on with with those guys over there in England.
Yeah.
My wife Jen and I just got to relatively recently in 2016. We got to go over for an expedition over in Cyprus. So they've got an organization where they'll take people that are in the Army but not necessarily jumpers, and they'll train them how to jump on this. It's basically a vacation time. They'll go over and teach them how to jump. So we went over there and assisted with that a little bit, and we still, year after year, we try to keep that relationship strong.
Oh, great. Yeah, we did a lot of jumping over there. There was Will Charette and I went over. We were the two NCOs that went over to train them, and it was supposed to be for tactical free fall. But we went up around Stonehenge and Farnborough. We did the Farnborough, jumped into Farnborough, the big facility there, and we had to demonstrate that we could jump in safely. And then their Air Force was going to jump in, and to do the big air show during the Farnborough air show. We jumped in, and all of our people landed on the target. The Air Force team missed the airfield, but they got the jump. So it was one of those things.
Yeah, you got to give it to your home team, right?
But we did it. And I went through, Charette and I both went through their jump school there at, what was the name of that drop zone? I can't remember it right offhand. But we jumped the Beverly and the Hastings and did all of that stuff. So we got our wings.
Was that at Netherhaven?
Netherhaven, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's where Jen and I went before we actually went to Cyprus. What was the jump school there like? Were there any big differences between ours here in the U.S. Army?
All our jump masters were from Kenya or someplace. And, of course, we messed them up because we were skydivers, and they wanted us to do something, and we wanted to do something else. So when we left them, we kind of left them with their mouth open because they wanted everybody to go out separately. Boom, 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 boom. And we went, but it was good. And we were jumping T-7s, flat circulars. It was all military. They said, don't stand up, don't stand up. So we all did a stand-up.
Have to force yourself to do a PLF.
Yeah, we're down on one knee.
Okay.
But we stood up on the second one.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice. So the original team was formed under the understanding that it was to be a competition team at the time?
Yeah, but it was a multi-purpose. You had to demonstrate and compete.
Okay.
Because there weren't many of us. And so when you weren't jumping for competition, you were on a demonstration. When in 61, when we went to 44 enlisted and 7 officers, then we split into a black team, gold team, and a competition team. And if the competition team wasn't jumping for a competition, then we would take a demo. So we could do that. We had to be able to do both.
Okay. Nice. Now it's a little bit differently where we train up the new members of the team to be demonstrators, and there's a minimum 1 year where they have to stay on a demonstration team, and then they can try out for a competition team above and beyond that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great thing, for to teach the new guys just to
how
to
become
become demonstrators first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
So when you left the team, what was the reason why you left the team?
Well, we had a kind of a time limit, and I'd been on it 6 years, and at that time, that was a long time. So they said, well, Phil Van der Week and I and name left me, but our time was up. So I went to Alaska to help start a new airborne company. There was 4 NCOs that ended up going, not from the team, but from the Army. And we started a new airborne company up in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Oh, wow.
And before I left Fort Bragg, I went by to see General Stilwell and say goodbye to him. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to Alaska. And he said, well, do you want to go to OCS? And I said, no. I said, I think I can do more as an NCO. And he said, well, do you want to go to flight school? And I said, well, I took all of the tests, but they said I was too old. He said, okay. He said, if something should happen and there's a letter comes out, would you be willing to drive at your own expense back to flight school? And I said, yes, sir, of course. So I went on to Alaska, and I got up there, and we started our airborne company. I got a call from General Stilwell, and he said, where have you been? I said, well, sir, I'm up here in Alaska. We're starting this airborne company. He said, well, you still want to go to flight school? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, send me all your paperwork. And I said, sir, it's in shipping, I don't have it. He said, well, as soon as you get there, update it and send it to me. He said, no, better than that, send it to Delk. And I said, sir? I said, who is Delk? He said, he's general in charge of officers' assignments. And he said, send it to him. He said, here's his address. And I wrote it down. He said, now read it back to me and make sure you have it right. And I read it back to him. He said, okay, get it and send it. So I did, as soon as I got the paperwork. And they held a board. That was the last thing I had to do was a board. And I passed the board. And he said, you're on your way to flight school.
That was your board to get into flight school?
To get into flight school, yeah. So I ended up driving back down to Texas to go to flight school.
Wow. It was in Texas at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fort Walters was your basic training, and then you went on to Alabama for your primary.
Okay. So it was at Fort Rucker then as well?
Yeah.
At Fort Rucker, Alabama. Mm-hmm. That's actually where I made my first jump.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, it was at Hatch Stage Field.
Yeah, yeah.
Down in Fort Rucker. Just a quick story. My dad, when I was 16, I wanted to jump when I was 14 years old, and he said I'd have to wait till I was 16. So he's like, if you still want to jump, when you're 16, let me know. So I told him I did, and he got me lessons. At the time, he was going to college to pursue his master's degree down at Columbus College. So he would drive down on the weekends and jump with the Fort Rucker Sport Parachute Club. So he shipped me by bus down there, and I met him at Fort Benning, and we drove down. And some of my happiest memories on that trip. And I made my first jump out of a UH-1 there at Hatch Stage Field.
Yeah. Well, while I was in flight school, I got a call from them. It said, would you come out and jump with us? And I said, I'm busy. I have to learn how to fly this helicopter first. So,
I imagine they wanted to use all your expertise and knowledge. So you went through flight school. You became a helicopter pilot.
Yes.
Did you... I think I have my timeline might be a little confused here, but did you go to Vietnam before or after you went through flight school?
I graduated, and 20 days later I was in Vietnam.
Wow. And
you didn't have much time. Yeah.
Oh, thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
And you were telling me briefly about your timeline. You said you did 2 tours in Vietnam? 2
tours in Vietnam. I came back to Hunter Army Airfield, Savannah, to the Department of Tactics, and we were flying B's and C's for transition for people, familiarization that were going over, and the Cobras were brand new then, so we had to drive down to Fort Stewart, and it was 44 miles one way down there from Savannah itself. So one day I told, and we were working half days, so I told the boss, I said, why don't we work a full day every other day? And that would give us less travel, and we could get everything done that we needed. He said, I don't think so. So a couple of days later he said, I think what we'll do is we'll work a full day every other day. So that's a good idea. So on the days off, I would go up to Cobra Hall and go through all the academics on the Cobras. Well, at the end, when I finished all of those, I got my Cobra transition. So I ended up being a Cobra SIP, a standardization instructor pilot, and went into standards. And that's how I got introduced into the Cobra.
Wow.
And my second tour was in Cobras.
Do you have any stories from your time flying those that you'd care to share?
I love them. It's a fantastic machine. We supported Aussies and anybody that needed support, and we went on some missions to help them because some of their ships got shot down because the Air Force has their gunships, and because they had some injuries, they pulled all of their gunships back to Australia. So they had slicks but no guns. So we would go and support them and fly their guns. And then, of course, after a mission, we'd come back and we'd do a high-speed low-level with a cyclic climb and a 180 and come back in and refuel and then head for home. But we would put on little air shows for them.
Yeah. I bet that was a lot of fun.
Well, they appreciated it because we'd pull into the POL and they'd refuel us and rearm us, and you'd refuel hot, and you never have to get out of the cockpit. So they appreciated that.
Nice. How long did you do that for?
Well, I was over there a year each time.
And
both tours.
When you got back, did you continue to fly the Cobras?
Yeah. Well, I went to a unit at Fort Benning, 121st, and I was a SIP there. I maintained my SIP work, and we did Hueys and Cobras both. So I'd give them 90-day check rides and everything for both the Cobras and the gunships and the slicks.
And for the rest of your time in the Army, you were a pilot?
Yes.
And how long was that?
I retired in 73.
And what was the total years of service for you?
22 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what did you do after you left the military?
I went to work for Hiller Helicopters manufacturer, and I was sales first, then I worked into the flight department, and I ended up doing all their flight production flight tests and then experimental flight tests. Excuse me. And I got my FAA DER, Designated Engineer Representative flight test, so the FAA said that I could go ahead and sign aircraft off for them. So it was quite an honor for me to be able to do that. And I was able, because of some of the flight tests that I did, experimental flight tests, I was selected to be a member of the Society of Experimental Test Pilots, which is all civilian and military flight tests. So it's a pretty well-known organization. And during the flight test, we had a piece of yarn on the bubble of the helicopter, and that was your trim indicator.
Wow. And
I thought, while I was doing this, I thought, how antiquated is this, And I went down for my first seminar at the society, and they were talking about when they flight tested the F-15 when it first started, and they had movies of the test, actual test. And the first thing I saw was this piece of yarn on the cockpit bubble. It was exactly like the one I was using flying the helicopter. So I thought, well, maybe I do belong here.
And when did that change? When did they change that method?
Oh, they still use it.
They still use it?
Oh, yeah. But they've got other apparatus now besides. But that's your fastest indicator of an out-of-trim condition.
Wow. Is
that yarn. If it goes to the side, then you're not trim. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. So you continued to keep jumping?
I started jumping again because of my flight career. I couldn't afford to have an injury during my flying career. As soon as that let off, then I started jumping again.
And where did you start jumping once you started jumping back?
Back up at Issaquah. Up at Issaquah in Port Angeles. We had a drop zone up there. And I started flying jumpers again because I was a fixed-wing pilot, too. And that was a blast. I really liked that.
Yeah, you were just telling me before we started the podcast that I was telling you about my dad flying down in the
Yes.
182, and you were telling me that you flew jumpers there.
Yeah.
Did you continue your competition career, or was it more of just a fun jumping thing for you at that point?
I became a SNTA at Elsinore, and my concern was the safety of the operations to make sure everything was good. And I managed Elsinore for a while, and it was consuming, 8 days a week instead of what I was supposed to be doing. So I ended up turning the management over to another fella and his wife. And I just stayed on as SNTA and instructor because I'm an old static line instructor. And I worked mainly as an SNTA then.
Okay. You were inducted into the Skydivers Hall of Fame.
Yes.
How did that make you feel? And can you tell us some about
fantastic. Well, personally, I couldn't figure out why. I just tried to do the best I could over the years and help as many people as I could, and I was quite honored to be nominated and selected to be a member of the Hall of Fame.
It was an honor for me to be able to jump in when we had a gathering out here at what's now Skydive Paraclete XP out in Rayford. Yes. A few of us from the 8-way team got to jump in and present you guys with some of your certificates, I believe.
And a baton. I remember that well, yes. And we were honored.
It was a huge honor for us. I remember Dan BC was there as well, and Dan BC is actually going to be here for this reunion, and might be letting the cat out of the bag. But by the time it happens, is when this podcast will be posted. So I don't think I'm giving out any spoilers there, but he's been elected as an honorary Golden Knight, and he'll be getting it there.
When I first met, I was managing, working at Elsinore at the time, and this new guy came in, and it happened to be Dan, and we didn't know each other, and we would drag the drop zone with the truck and the wire fence and smooth it out, and we just worked together. We became fast friends, and there was no effort to it. It was just that he was a good guy, and and that's been almost 20 years ago. And I've watched him. He wasn't even married then. He's married and he's grown kids now, but we still see each other, and it's one of those greetings, like old friend. But he's such a neat guy.
He is. Yeah, he's another one of my heroes as well. One of the great things about the sport is that we have so many great people and have so many, I have so many heroes in the sport. And so that brings me to my next question. Who are some of your heroes and mentors?
Oh, just about everybody that jumps. Mentors, wow. All of the guys that were on the strike team, they're the ones that really helped and guided each other. We worked together as a team, so they're all my heroes. General Stilwell was a superhero. Colonel Bill Greaves, superhero. Jumper-wise, got Dick Fortenberry, Lloyd Bryden, Jim Pearson, all those guys, all of them. Yeah.
I got to meet Loy several years ago, and I just was talking to T via email. I wanted to interview her as well. I was hoping that she was going to be able to be here for the reunion, but unfortunately she wasn't able to make it this year.
Yeah.
It's such an honor for me to be able to meet people from your generation of the team, and I'd really appreciate you guys being the pioneers and making it to be what it is today. And it's afforded me the great opportunity to be able to serve an entire career pretty much on the Golden Knights, and to be able to accomplish my dreams of being a full-time competitor and a world champion. And I really just can't thank you enough. Another one of the things that my dad wanted me to ask you was, of the original team members, do you have any kind of unveiled traditions that that you could tell us about? Do you have any? I think one of the things that he specifically asked about was a last bottle or anything like that. No.
No. The only thing I can say about the team is over the years, I've followed them pretty close on everything that you've done, and I have such pride.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be able to carry on the legacy that you guys have created. And if you don't have anything left to add that you'd like to talk about, or anything that we've missed, I'll ask you the final question. Do you have anything left to add?
No, I just wanted to say I have so much pride in all you guys.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I really appreciate it. It's such an honor for me to be able to sit here and have this conversation with you. So I guess we'll cap it off then. And one last question: do you have any words of advice for anyone that's getting ready to embark on a champion's journey of their own, or anyone that's getting ready to join the Army and try out for the Army parachute team?
Safety and have fun. If you're safe, think about what you're doing. Don't take chances. If you don't feel right, then don't do it. Just be safe. Have a good time. That's the biggest thing.
Thank you so much, Jerry. That's great advice. It's been an honor.
My honor.